Shanna Schmidt, and she is going to show us some cool things in her booth. Shannon, please tell us a little bit about yourself and what you have to show us today.
So I guess the most important thing about myself is that I used to be an A&A governor. That's probably the most important piece of information that I want to give. I was an A&A governor for 2 terms. So this last term I decided not to run again. I decided it was time to let other people come on board and give it a shot. But I am not your typical coin dealer. As you could tell, first of all, I'm female, which is, in itself an anomaly. I did something totally different before I decided to come into numismatics. I actually studied classical piano.
Oh, wow.
Yep. For my undergrad. I started playing the piano at a really early age, and I still play. But about halfway through, I was at University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana, and about halfway through I decided that I would switch my major, and I went into communications for no other reason than my father said, "You're creative, why don't you do advertising?"
Yeah.
So I worked in advertising for a number of years, and after 2 children and living in Germany, my father and my mother both got me to come back to the U.S. by offering me a job to work with my dad, which I ended up taking.
Yeah.
And so since 2005, I've been working with coins. So this is my 20th year of being in the coin business. Although I attended my first A&A as an infant, and I paged. So if you do enough research on me, you will see me in a page uniform with a cute little red hat. It is on my website.
We might have to find that.
Yes, it's very funny. It's very endearing. But I went off on my own and formed my own business in 2016. And so that was a very long introduction, but that's me.
That's awesome. Yeah, so tell us a little bit about the coins that you have on display here. They look beautiful, and you're well known for ancients
yes.
as well.
Yeah, my area of expertise is ancient coins, and that's where my heart first goes. However, I also like coins in general, so I appreciate even U.S. coins, which I don't know much about. I still have an appreciation for coins. But I also have, world coins. I have, German coins. I have early British hammered coins. But the way people know me, when they associate coins to Shanna Schmidt numismatics, they think ancients.
Ancients, yeah. And you have some beautiful ancient coins on display here.
So yeah, I have 2 coins here today. They're totally different. One is Greek and one is actually, they would say, you would hear Byzantine Empire, but what it actually is the Romans, once they moved at a certain point in the 5th century, they moved their capital, or started, actually it was earlier than the 5th century, they started to move their capital over to Byzantium, which is Istanbul. And so we had the Roman Empire in both the East and the West. And at one point, Italy started to kind of decrease in importance, and Byzantium, Istanbul, started to increase in importance. So we have a Greek coin and we have a coin from the Roman Empire, but the Western Roman Empire, and it is, Eastern Roman Empire, and it is what we would call Byzantine coins. So I'll talk first about this one if you want. Or
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let's dive in. What's the story behind this beautiful coin here?
Okay, so this coin here is a coin from Syracuse. It is a decadrachm of Syracuse. The decadrachm of Syracuse they think it was a coin that was struck for, not necessarily for payment of troops, but as like a celebration piece, an honorary piece that they would give to people. It was struck at the end of the 5th century BC, and the interesting thing with this is that this is the obverse of the coin. Now, most people think that the reverse of the coin should always be this side. Most people think that. And they think that the obverse of the coin is on this side.
Yeah, I would have thought the same.
But it's contrary to what you would expect. So what we have here is, as I said, there's two kinds of, there's the decadrachm. There were two known, which is phenomenal if you think back that this is, in the 5th century BC. There were two known artists for decadrachms. The first was Euenetos, and the second was Kimon. This is in the style of Euenetos. It is not signed, although some of them are signed and they tend to bring more money. But this is in the style of Euenetos. It's a very serene-looking Arethusa. She's got beautiful hair, and I don't know if you can see that, but the relief on this is just wonderful.
It's stunning.
Super high relief. She's got 4 dolphins. One of the dolphins is unfortunately off the plan. 4 dolphins floating, swimming around her head. And she even has, jewelry that you can see. She has like a drop earring, and she has a little pearl necklace on. It's a lovely image of Arethusa. So that, I'm starting with the reverse. So the obverse of the coin is a quadriga, and it's with the charioteer. And the charioteer is, you can tell that this quadriga is really kind of racing at the time, because the charioteer is using its, is striking the horses to get them to go faster.
Yeah.
And you can see that the horses' heads are in like kind of all different directions, so it's really dynamic.
Yeah.
And then overhead, you have a Nike who's crowning the charioteer. So there's a lot going on.
Yeah, there's a lot of detail.
In the exurg, what we call the exurg, there's kind of like the military implements. So this was obviously struck for, during wartime, and it was struck to celebrate victory. Mm-hmm. And you have the military garb, a cuirass, what people would wear during war, and then you have a helmet as well. So this coin is it's a phenomenal piece, and normally these coins come with what's called die rust, where after a certain amount of time, the die starts to break down, and it shows on the coin, where die rust will kind of show itself as like the coins may be blurry. It could still be a high relief, but it doesn't look sharp. The sharpness isn't there.
This one looks sharp.
But this doesn't have that, which is wonderful. And so both sides of it are actually really nice. And this coin also comes from an old collection, and it was in an auction in the 60s, the early 60s, in a British auction. So I'm proud to have this coin in my case.
That is a beautiful coin. What would you say the value of that coin is today?
So that's the funny thing with the decadrachm. People say to me often, like, oh, this is a really rare coin. It's not a rare coin. It's just the height of Greek artistry. It's like, some people may argue it, and they might say like, oh, we think this coin's nicer, this coin's. It's definitely a coin that is an unforgettable piece of history, and it shows the artistry of the Greeks at a time when in other culture they were still bartering.
Yeah.
They weren't even using coinage, and the Greeks were so ahead of their time.
Wow, I can see why you brought it.
Yeah. So a coin like this can range from, there was one that recently sold in auction for $300,000.
Oh, wow.
They can go, if it's a signed one, it can go to $500,000. This coin right now this coin is priced at about $100,000, a little bit under $100,000, which is actually a decent price. It sold an auction in 2012 for $120,000. That's an auction record, which is already quite a while ago.
Yeah.
So
is stunning.
yeah, I don't normally have these in my case, so I'm really proud to have it.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. So let's talk about the other coin you have here. It's just as beautiful.
Yeah. So the other coin is interesting in a lot of different ways. It's not as it's not as impressive like the size or the weight of this coin. This was struck under, it's a coin of Irene, who is a Byzantine empress, and she lived in the late 700s AD. And once Rome moved its capital over to Istanbul, what's now Istanbul, they had emperors just like they did when it was the early days of the Roman Empire over in Rome. Now, first of all, women weren't really ruling, and Irene was no different. Irene was she had the abilities. She was a smart woman, but she was a woman. So her son was the person that, if anybody was going to take the throne, it was going to be her son, who eventually did. But the really interesting thing with Irene, which I love, and I told you guys earlier, is that Irene, which I just found out this myself, which I did not know, Irene was supposed to marry Charlemagne. And in history, Charlemagne is, very important. And you have Western Christianity and Eastern Christianity, and what could have been if Irene would have married Charlemagne. But Charlemagne was illiterate, and the people of Byzantium were completely against it. They said, why would we want to marry off our very important Byzantine empress? They didn't call her a Byzantine empress, but our very important, person here to an illiterate. So the marriage never happened. She did get married. She had a son, and her son, she didn't like it that she was having to, just help him rule while he was young. And eventually, she's pretty full of herself. She's on both sides of this coin, by the way.
Oh, wow.
Not just one side, both sides.
Both sides.
And Irene actually stabbed out, I don't think she did it herself, but she had somebody stab out her son's eyes.
Ooh.
So that she could continue to rule.
Yeah.
She was, as we would say, she was pretty bad. But I also want to give Irene a little break, because the same with Cleopatra. I don't necessarily believe everything that history has written, because you also have to consider the source of who was writing the history. And there was obviously a lot of, in times like these, now we can kind of look back and say, it was a successful woman. And what I've read about Cleopatra, for example, I think she was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I don't really care if she was like drop dead gorgeous. People don't talk about some very important men in time about how good looking they were. I guess that might be an aside, but that's not the most important thing. But for Cleopatra, it was all about like, she was such a, sexy person, and, but she was so ugly. She had a big nose, a hook nose, and but they don't talk about her achievements. So I'm not sure if I necessarily believe all the bad about. I believe that she thirsted for power, but I'm not sure if I believe that she was as evil as they say. I think she was living in a man's world.
Yeah.
But those are my 2 coins.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much, Shanna, for sharing your collections with us. You just have an amazing display here, and
You're sweet. Thank you.
super appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
Well, thank you guys for tuning in. We are at the National Money Show in Atlanta at the Cobb Galleria Center, and thank you so much for